Hello and welcome back. Amber here, and today I am joined by Christian from Christian's Hobby Blog and Laura from A Brick Without a Wall. And today we are probably going to start out talking about some fantasy locations that we really like. And we're spanning a bunch of different series and works of art. So if you can't keep up, if you don't know all of them, that's fine. Not all of us are going to know all of them anyway. So we've got a learning curve here for people who don't know them all.
Okay. So one of the places that I actually love, and it's located in A Song of Ice and Fire, is the Water Gardens near Sunspear in Dorne. I love that location. I mean, I know Dorne started like Lemongate for A Song of Ice and Fire predictions, which I love. But with the Water Gardens, this serves as a private residence of the rulers of Dorne, and it's located next to a beach on the summer sea. It's paved in like pink marble, and the gardens and the courtyards. There's terraces overlooking pools and other various water features. Everything's shaded by orange trees. It sounds magical. And then when you look at pictures of from even Game of Thrones where they recreated this, it looks even magical there. But I did find out through some research that you can actually visit that location. It's the Alcazar of Seville in Spain. And while it's one of their most popular tourist attractions, the show actually got them to shut down half of it for filming, which I thought was really cool.
This is a segue, I guess, tangent, but have you seen online their filming for House of the Dragon? Like they've been in touristy locations, so as they've been shooting, there are tourists like with their cell phones, like spoiling major stuff and posting it on the
Oh
internet.
no. Oh no, I didn't know that. That would be so hard to work with, honestly.
I think HBO just came out and was like, "Yes, what you see is what you think it is. That is happening." Yeah.
How else do you really handle it in the age of instant
No,
information?
it's wild though. And I mean, there okay, so going back to the water gardens, for one on the show, that looked great. Like that was a
Yeah,
really nice location. And I think too that as far as like locations and Dorne go, like that's the place you want to be because Dorne is like a desert. Sucks. Like,
absolutely. It's a paradise oasis located within a savage desert.
right.
I love it. I love it. I love how Martin thought about including that and placing it where he placed it. I love everything about Dorne personally.
It's
I would oh, sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
it's a nice location because, I mean, we have something like this in the Wheel of Time, but it's this really rough climate that shapes the people that live there. And that's why you can't really fuck with Dorne. Like, when dragons came to take over, the Dornish were like, nah, like, you can't do anything because there aren't like major big cities that they can just fly over and destroy. Like it's spread out a little bit. And then again, I mean, what are you gonna do? Take the keep, take the castle, and then what? Like everyone's spread out. You're just gonna be looking at revolt after revolt after revolt. And you can't do like a pitched battle there because all of the people from like the southern from a more northern area can't cope with the heat. So they're walking around like idiots with full armor on, just melting. It's great.
Right. Yeah, I really love how another aspect of the water gardens is that societal class doesn't come into play, that the Martells allow every child from every caste that's there play in the gardens because of like what you were saying, the sun burns so hot there.
Yeah.
That's why I really enjoyed A Feast for Crows because a lot of people justly do not like that book because it's very separate from everything that we've already read. And a lot of it is in Dorne, but I really love those chapters where it's from Doran Martell's point
Absolutely.
of view. And he's just describing, this is how we live. We let everybody use these pools. And I really love the dragon aspect of it because they're the only nation that has really been able to fend them off. And it makes me wonder why the Tower of Joy was just so close to Dorne. Why was that the location? of Tower Joy, but that's separate. But I just love Dawn, and there's so many questions that I want answers to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to go to the Alcazar of Seville now.
Let's go.
I told Amber this morning if I ever become wealthy, I'm already going to host a Game of Thrones trip.
One
But
of
I got to say, oh, go ahead, Christian.
I was just gonna say one of the funniest kind of people filming with the phones. One of my favorite was the Tower Joy one, where somebody crawled all the way to the shooting location because it's like up on a mountain and they're shooting downwards. And you can see the guy as Ned Stark fighting Arthur Dayne and everyone, and they're like, "Come on, get him, Benny," because he's Sean Bean, and he's like, "Get him, Beanie," and like all this stuff, and it's the funniest video you'll ever see. I remember when that came out, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, we're actually getting Tower of Joy this season because season 6." But that was
I
really
love
funny.
that. I love the desperation of fans to ruin a take.
It's like the same type of people that go streaking on a soccer pitch, you know? It brings the same energy.
Just uninhibitedly just breaking and entering into sets and crawling around. I love that. Oh man, you can actually visit where they filmed the Tower of Joy in Spain too. It's beautiful.
Oh,
I
can
looked
you?
at pictures of it this morning. I'll have to send you the article I sent Amber. All three of us can go. It'll be the geekiest trip ever.
I picked for one of mine Greywater Watch, which is the location of House Reed. And for one, like, okay, there's two parts to this. Like, one, how it looks and it's described visually is just cool. And I wish
Yeah.
that we would have been able to see something like that. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think they would have known what to do with it or would have been too scared to touch it because they would have had to invent too much stuff since it's so unknown. So like there's that aspect to where it remains like this giant mystery within A Song of Ice and Fire. And when you bring in like Howland and his backstory, it's just this giant question mark. So for me, like those two things combined, like what it looks like and how it impacts the story, make it really interesting and really fun to kind of look at. So like there's this big mystery about it because Mira states that like the ravens can't find Greywater Watch, and she's saying the ravens can't and our enemies can't either. And Bran's asking why not, and she says because it moves. And when you think about it, it's like, okay, well, is this like some weird magic? Do we have like a Howl's Moving Castle situation on our hands? Is it magic? Is it like a glamour? Do people just can't see it because there's like magic happening and they're just seeing what they want to be shown, I guess, if that makes sense? Or is there actually a way that you can move a castle? And this, I guess, encouraged me to like look up about crannogs. And I've actually been to one before because I'm a huge nerd and wanted to see what it looked like, probably because of A Song of Ice and Fire. And it's really wild and it's really crazy how old they actually are because like some of these were created before the pyramids. So like we're going like way,
Oh
way
wow.
back, like way back. Okay, some of them are like a man-made island. So like if you just like start piling up a bunch of rocks on a pond or lake somewhere, eventually you're going to have a surface where you can build something. But a lot of places too did it almost where it's like on stilts. So you would have like the foundation, you would
Okay.
hammer into the bottom of the bed and then like put platforms on top of it and then build up your structure there. But like all of that in mind, you can't move a building like that. Like that's not possible. And there's
Well, not without magic.
not without magic, but I don't think that in A Song of Ice and Fire, like you can really, I don't think magic is that big of a factor in things where you can move a whole castle or glamour a whole castle, I guess, if that makes sense. Yeah.
It does.
And so there's one, like, to me, there's only one option. And since they are the Crannog men, they live on a Crannog. There's this place in Peru on Lake Titicaca where they've been doing this for a really long time, but if you start collecting reeds and then bundling them together and then bundling those together, you eventually get like this giant platform that floats and they will build like a whole city up there. And the reason they did that was because at the time, like if invaders come, all they had to do was like anchor it and then cut it away and just like float the fuck off into the lake. Like later, you can't catch us. So, like, when I was looking at that, I was like, okay, so technically that is a type of cranog, and technically you could do something like that, like float it off to a different part of the swamp or whatever. And if that's the case, you can have a moving castle. There, solve the mystery.
Absolutely. I love it. Has anybody else ever wondered why Martin was so almost vague or cloak and dagger about Greywater Watch? He's such a detailed writer that this is one of those areas that he doesn't actually provide a lot of detail about, which makes it very intriguing.
So I think to get any more information on Greywater Watch, you have to have a point of view character actually be there.
Right.
And if you're there, then you have to include Howland Reed, who is like the key to a lot of these big mysteries because everyone else is dead. Rhaegar is dead. Ned Stark is dead. So, like, who's going to tell the story of what happened? It has to be
Right.
Howland, right? Or unless they pull out something ridiculous like Sam ending up at the Citadel going through books and finding information, which he could do, but I don't think that Rhaegar like wrote anything down and left any notes anywhere about what happened. But
Unfortunately.
right? But Howland is just I mean, he's probably not even that great of a guy because all of this warfare and all of this stuff is happening in the north. And where is Howland Reed? Like floating off on his reeds? He's not doing
Look,
anything.
I understand that that may not be the most honorable route,
Relatable.
but in light of like making decisions for your people, that's not a terrible idea when you've got a bunch of, questionably intelligent people running around waging war with each other.
Yeah. I mean, he
I'd
was
cut it loose and go too.
float off into the
I'd just
swamp.
float off, float me off. Let me know when you guys have got things settled. We'll come back and anchor ship.
That's the Reed's answer to everything, just slowly floating off.
See you later.
No, there's a bunch of wild Mira Reed theories, and
Really?
yeah, those are fun. Obviously, with like a lot of A Song of Ice and Fire theories, there's a lot of really out there ones. I think the most out there one is that Mira is actually Jon Snow's twin sister.
I've heard that one.
They're the same age, and Howland was with him at the Tower of Joy, and Howland Reed was there at the tourney at Harrenhal where he met Lyanna, and he kind of owes Lyanna for the whole Night of the Laughing Tree thing because he was getting made fun of, and Lyanna came in and whooped the crap out of the squires or whoever that were making fun of him. So it kind of like supposedly solidified this relationship between the two. And if Rhaegar and Lyanna had two children, because she died in childbirth, it would make it easier to understand if it was twins to die that way because they don't have modern medicine and having twins is more risky. But instead of Ned taking home two babies, that would have raised some eyebrows, I think. I mean, even more than just bringing home one. maybe Benjen took the other child to Greywater Watch and raised it as his own, and Ned took the boy. And there's a lot of flaws in this theory, though, because Mira has green eyes and she's small like the rest of the Cranach men. And I don't know. Like, it's fun to think about, though.
I love fan theories.
So do
Even
I.
the wild ones are just entertaining to read because it's like, wow, I've never thought about it that way. Whether I'm into their theory or not, I just like digesting information I've never thought about.
Right? And I mean, it's the same thing with like what really happened at the Tower of Joy. Like all of these questions revolve around Howland Reed. And like his kids are wild. I mean, Jojen is pretty resolute with the fact that he knows he's going to die. And he comes along on this wild adventure to die, pretty much is what it seems like. And things get dark for him. And I mean, when he dies, like they feed him to Bran. Like that's one of the
Which is,
things.
incredibly weird
It's
and
so,
unsettling in a way.
so
It's
weird.
unsettling.
It's so weird.
Like,
But what okay, like why would you, if you only have two kids and one is your heir, so Mira is the heir, which is also a thing like Dorne, because everywhere else in Westeros, it always goes to the oldest male son, but the Dornish don't care about that, and apparently neither do the Cranach men, which is cool. But
super cool.
why would you send your only two heirs off on this wild adventure? Like, it seems a bit reckless, unless it
For
was
your line.
right, unless they knew something that was much more important than what everyone else knows. And Howland Reed is like into some crazy stuff. He's got some magic going on. Like there's a lot of things pointing to him to being a little bit more of like a mystic type of person. Yeah.
I really enjoy the segments about the reads and the books. I feel like some of it was skipped over in the show, obviously, but they're one of my favorite families in the books.
They're cool.
Absolutely.
They're so, I don't know, there's so much
Yeah.
mystery.
I love the progressive like mindsets of the Reeds and the Martells as far as women are concerned. It's a breath of fresh air in a time period of far spread oppression on women.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it makes it
I mean,
cool
look,
too, like that just some of the women that we get from Dorne and some of the women that we see, I guess it's only Mira from her family, but a lot of them are really competent. Like all of, okay,
yeah.
I'm not going to talk about the show, but like
Well, yeah.
all of Oberyn's daughters, like they are on some special ops stuff, like all of them.
They are the Delta Force of
Yes.
Dorne.
Yes.
Like, they are wildly skilled and trained in the art of warfare.
Yeah.
I love the sand snakes. Not so much in the show, but in the
They
books, absolutely.
they
Even with their
tried.
flaws, I like
Yeah.
them a lot as a trio and what they represent from Dorne, which is like progression.
Right. And I don't remember all of their names, but I think one is pretending to be a man and is studying at the Citadel with the Maesters. Christian, what about you? Was there any, you didn't have any A Song of Ice and Fire locations, did you?
I did not, but I want to quickly highlight the wall from its deep history with Bran the Builder, working with the giants to then bless the wall. But I really love in the books the kind of lead up to everything that happens with the Storm of Swords arc line, from the wildlings coming through the wall. I guess that's end of, or no, that's way beyond. Never mind. But everything with the Night's Watch versus the wildlings battle. I think that's the coolest sort of ending ever. But that's only in the middle of the book, I think, and then the rest of the book happens. No, it's Red Wedding, and then the rest. Yeah. I haven't read the book in so long, but yeah, the wall is just so cool, in my opinion.
when you were
Agreed.
talking about it, it made me think about something else that might maybe be an inspiration for it. I'm not sure. You said Bran the Builder worked with giants, right? To
Yes.
create it. So that's like the earliest depiction of Merlin the magician. So when they were trying, like long, long ago, when they were trying to figure out how Stonehenge was made, they decided, like, oh, obviously Merlin helped a bunch of giants make it. So, like, you have a magic user and giants working in tandem to create this megalith. So, I don't know. Maybe George was into that, but I like the only reason I know it is because the the ways in the Wheel of Time. So the way gates in the books are totally different and they look like Stonehenge. Like it's like two pillars with like something over the top. And the show, they're much different. They took some touristy destination from Bali and decided that's what we're going with. But the Waygate from the books is much more in line with like how you would picture Stonehenge.
I've never made that connection between the Wheel of
It
Time
makes
and the wall.
it makes a lot of sense once you say it. Absolutely. Like now that you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, I can totally see that.
They well the Waygate is a it's like a portal kind of, but this is also like long ago people are theorizing, well, what is Stonehenge? What does it do? Are there, there's always these mystical properties attributed to it with a lot of these like megalithic sites. So magic is involved, like quote unquote magic is involved. And so it had to be a magician, so a male magic user with giants. And in the Wheel of Time, the Ogier would be a stand-in for that. So the Waygates were made by male channelers, male magic users, and giants. And then in like our mythology, giants and Ogier at one point kind of branched off and became two different things. But if you go back far enough, they were more of the same creature. So I don't know. I love my Ogier. I love them. They're so sweet and murderous. Oh,
They're murderous?
Laura, you don't know anything about this, do you? Should we
No.
tell you?
It's one of the few areas of the Wheel of Time that I don't think I've had any exposure to yet. I have a really like a real depth of knowledge of the Wheel of Time when I've never read it.
Yeah.
I've listened to a lot of Amber's podcasts, so
So the Ogier are generally like very peaceful,
that's
but
how they
they're
seem.
yeah, but there's a saying within the Wheel of Time. What is it? To anger the Ogier is to bring mountains down on your head. And like
Ooh.
when they get upset about something, when they have to fight for something, they are wild. Like they are just picture like them ripping a tree out of the ground and just using it as a club to just, beat the crap out of Trollocs left
I
and
could
right.
totally picture that because that feels like me when I'm angry.
Oh, and they sing songs too while they're on a murder spree, like on the
Okay.
field of battle. And the lyrics to like their songs that they're singing when they're murdering is delightful.
Ooh. Ooh, I'm gonna have to check
I'll
out
back
their
that
war
up.
songs.
Oh, your war songs. Yeah.
Gonna have to check out their war songs. These sound interesting. I actually, when we first started talking about doing fantasy locations, Tar Valon was one of the first places I thought about. And then, of course, you have to have a Tolkien location, and mine would actually be Minas Morgul.
You're gonna have to tell me about it because I know next to nothing.
I don't have a lot of information about Minas Morgul. I'm just talking about from the movies. I really enjoy watching in Lord of the Rings where they come up to the gates of Minas Morgul and it's got those like massive gargoyle demon statues, and then the fell beast live there with the Witch King of Angmar. It's very dark
Sounds
in a
very
really
gothic.
it's very gothic and dark, but in a really menacing way. It's not like a cheesy gothic. It's very menacing, and I love it.
Yeah, some of the
Mhm.
history with it is it was originally a human outpost, sort of like Minas Tirith. Think of a very small
Okay.
version of that. And it was sort of the home base when they beat back Sauron after the first kind of pushback when Isildur was doing all his shenanigans with the ring. And after that happened, they
Isildur's the
started to,
son, right?
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
he's the yeah, and he after they beat them back to within Mordor, they set up this outpost and got Sauron got strength again. Sent out all his Nazgul and a bunch of orcs to take it over, and it's been
Ooh.
so tainted and just tainted that it's become like this evil like green haze area. And after the events of Lord of the Rings, they actually completely just tear it down and leave it like completely nature like gave it back to nature basically because they're like we don't even want to be in this disgusting cursed location.
Okay,
So
so
let's
is
That
just
this
yeah.
is this like an Arid Hall
Yes.
situation? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I like
that
that.
that evil green magical haze is what makes Minas Morgul so visually delightful. I love it. Like I said, it just looks menacing. And the Witch King of Angmar is one of my favorite characters from those movies. So, I mean, you gotta represent his home base here.
Real quick,
Represent.
have you played the Shadow of Mordor games?
I have.
Okay, because it covers that sort of transition period between a human settlement to what it is today. In the second game, Shadow
I
War.
haven't played a lot of it though.
It's
Like, I'll be
amazing.
hon-
I
the
love those
control.
games.
I quit playing because the controls were kind of clunky.
Yeah, gotta get used to it. Once it's good,
Yeah.
ooh, I listened to like half of the Wheel of Time series just playing those games. So
Ooh, man,
I have it on audiobook.
I could knock out some books if I still played some video games. Yeah, I didn't
I've
think
never
about
thought
that.
about listening to books while I play video games.
Well,
I wonder how that would go.
I do like mindless games though, like The Sims. I just like go to town and build mode. So like that would be perfect for that.
Yes, that I could do. Building homes in build mode that my sim cannot afford to
Yes.
buy.
Yes.
And then I'm like, shit, what have I done?
What I
I
do
was
is
supposed to move them in first.
I go into like city mode and then like I'll build like the whole town and change everybody's houses and all the houses that aren't lived in yet. So eventually, like when everything fills up, it's like I've created the entire town and I've created all the people in the town and run havoc. Have you heard about a side note? Have you heard about like a basement goblin in The Sims?
No?
Where like you just okay, so like say you have like 3 kids and one of them you just don't ever play and you don't like. You just like lock them in the basement with like an easel and make them paint for the rest of their lives. Or, like, I don't know, whatever their job is, if they can do it at a computer or whatever. So you can just like make them your slave.
The
I didn't know you could do that.
I did know that you can lock Sims in rooms and they will change into whether they die or what happens. But I'm actually the kind of person when I play The Sims, I'm basically moving on as soon as I've played maybe 30 minutes of actual game time. I could spend 15 hours in build mode and
Same,
then I will play for 30 minutes and get over the wall agitated by my Sims needs. I'm like, why do you need to eat so much?
right? Feed yourself, feed yourself.
Do
Chris,
your own thing.
okay, so you were talking about this Lord of the Rings location, and I said it was like Arid Hall. So, Laura, do you remember in the TV show they go to that cursed city and the black, like, I don't know. In the show, it's kind of
Yes.
like a crumbly, foggy thing.
I had forgotten about that area, but if I had remembered that when I was putting together my list, that would have been on there. I loved that deserted, walled in city from Wheel of Time. That was one of my favorite locations in the show.
I really liked it too. I felt really bad for the horse that got there,
I
but
know.
yeah, in the books, it's the like you get obviously a lot more background on it. But you know how in the United States, what was it like Roanoke, like Jamestown, where like this whole group of settlers just disappeared and nobody knew what happened to them, and it's a big mystery. They probably all got sick and died. But it was the same situation for this location in the Wheel of Time. Like an entire city just vanished pretty much overnight. And so it's like there's some bad juju in there. And
Do do we find out more about that later on, or was that just kind of like cut and dry as is?
you find out like bits and pieces of it as the story goes on, but
Okay.
there's without getting too spoilery, there was this character that shows up into town and he kind of like rubs off on the king there, and he gets real paranoid and starts thinking everyone's out to get him, and it pretty much like rubs off on the entire population there. So people are turning on one another and not trusting anyone and just getting really suspicious. And then, like, from one day to the next, everyone has just disappeared. And the character that came into this town is actually the character who Matt takes that dagger from. So, like in the show, he just finds this dagger, but in the books, he takes this dagger from this character, this evil person, and it affects him. And so, like, that person is forever like hunting Matt down to get his dagger back, and we didn't have that on the show. But I think it'll come into play in season 2,
Okay.
unless they
Secret.
skip the dagger altogether. I don't know, and
I
just
don't
focus on
know.
the horn.
Well, doesn't Moraine take the dagger from him in season 1 towards the
Mhm.
end?
Yeah.
So, are they still going to hunt Matt for the dagger, or would they start hunting Moraine for the dagger?
Well, I would assume the dagger right now is in Tarvalin,
Right.
and someone okay, so in the books, like the it gets kind of wild because things keep getting stolen and then retaken and then stolen again. So there's a lot of heists happening, and
Ooh.
the dagger gets taken back by the original owner of the dagger, but they're off searching for that. And then at one point, do you remember the horn that they find under the throne? And they're like, it's the bloody horn
Yes.
of Valir. Like that came out of nowhere, but okay.
I do have a question, like a logistics question. So everybody is running around heisting the dagger back and forth, trying to take possession of it and keep it. What does the dagger do for you? Exactly, because the way that the show presents the dagger, it seems more like an infection of the mind than some tool of power.
That's my understanding based on the book, is that it's an infection of the mind, and you don't really gain anything positive out of it unless, I guess, you are the original guy, as it's very Smog like. I would compare this guy to Smog, where
Okay.
Bilbo takes a cup and he notices. If you take the dagger, this guy notices. That's the closest I can say without spoilers.
Okay. I was like, I
I
wonder what does
don't know
everybody
if there
want
was
the
more I was
dagger
missing, but
for?
Yeah,
Does it like open a portal or what does it do?
in the books, they have to find it because you know how in the show Matt was like getting real sad and nasty, and okay, so he's tainted by the dagger, but Moraine wasn't able to fully heal him before it gets stolen again. So if he's not connected with the dagger like on his person, like he's gonna die. Like they need to find him, find the dagger. They need to sever the connection between it so that Matt can live, I guess. But since he also had that connection to it, he's kind of like a hound dog for it. Like he can kind of like sense when he's near it.
Okay.
And they're also searching for the Horn of Val'ir. So the two items are usually together. So they're kind of running around town looking for everything.
Scavenger hunting.
Yes, yes, exactly.
I know this is kind of a cold-blooded thing to say, but I wouldn't put in that much work or take that much risk to save Matt. I would not. I'd be like, I don't know what to tell you, my guy, but we've decided to vote you off the island. You are on your own. You did this to yourself. I think it's time you take a little bit of accountability and you fix it.
The
Hit
worst
us up
part,
when you got this fixed.
yeah, the worst part is everyone warns them. They're like, don't touch anything, don't take anything. Or if someone offers you something, don't take it. Or no, what is it? Whatever it is, but however they say it, he's able to like talk his way out of it because he's like, well, you didn't say, I couldn't do this.
Yes, because magic understands loopholes.
Right.
Like Matt to me is basically the same as the ferry driver, like, or as the ferryman. He's the same person. The ferryman and his ferry, Matt and his dagger, nobody can tell them shit.
Matt is pretty annoying in the first and second book.
Incredibly.
But he eventually, a lot of people love him. He is their favorite Wheel of Time
Weird.
character.
He seems like an idiot, so that seems hard for me. I mean, I know that's really blunt and kind of like rude to say, but everything he does, I'm like, why do they keep entertaining this idiot and taking care of him? Like, leave him in the Two Rivers, like send him home. He is not helpful in their progression through the story that I've seen so far. He's nothing but a hindrance, honestly. How is Rand supposed to save anybody when he's so busy taking care of Matt?
Oh God, there's so much I want to say, but it's all major spoilers.
That was a huge tangent about how much I hate Matt.
No, the first two books, I was like, why does anyone like this character? Why? But then
why does Moraine tolerate him?
She shouldn't. He's like a child that needs one of those leashes. You know what I mean?
Like a little backpack leash.
Yeah. And Moraine, at certain points, she's just like, go ahead, do something stupid. I will kill you before I let the Dark One take you. So have fun with that.
That's why I like her.
Yeah. Well, she's like herding kittens. I just feel bad for her. I know a lot of people, when they read the series when they're younger, they're like, oh, I really identify with Egwene or really like Rand. But I read it
could see that
as an adult. And so as I'm reading this, Moraine is she's so frustrated. I'm like, I relate to this woman. Like, I relate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Matt sucks.
Kristen, you had a Wheel of Time location, didn't you?
I didn't write it down. I should have, maybe. Oh, yes, I did. Tel'aran'rhiod. This is the dream world. This is a whole other layer of the entire existence or universe that not everybody can access. And I am doing my darndest not to spoil anything, but this is basically a world where the wolves can access random people who don't even realize they're in Tel'aran'rhiod. They can just dream themselves in there for 2 seconds. They're about to die, and then they wake up, so they get taken out. But this is a physical location that I am just absolutely obsessed with. This was the first time in the series that I was like, oh my gosh, I am committed to reading the rest of the books, because this is not book one that we have any idea about this place, not even book two, it's later. And when that is unveiled to us, that's when everything kind of settled for me, because I love when this is something that comes from my video game background, but I love it when I think the Dark Souls games are my main reference for this. I love when I'm playing that game and I finish it, and then they say, okay, now we're going to completely change it. We're going to change enemy placements, all of that. And we're just going to change it up. And it's familiar, but it's different. And Tel'aran'rhiod is the same in where I was about to do a Cosmere magic explanation, but I realized I'm the only sort of expert on Cosmere magic systems, so that would not help y'all. But it's basically like how people view it. The more people who view it that way, the more set in stone it is in Tel'aran'rhiod.
Okay.
So if a door is always open, like if I always like to think of it as my household, we always have that chair that has the clothes on top of it. And in Tel'aran'rhiod, all those clothes and tape on the chairs stay there for so long that it's just a mainstay in this mirror world that you can access. And there's a lot of plots surrounding this where our characters are looking for items and they're like, we have no idea where this is. Let's go visit it in this alternate world. And they go there and they start looking around. They start opening envelopes, but it's constantly changing because those envelopes stay for seconds, minutes, at most a day on the desk. So they just have to keep up. And I love sort of the entire concept of this mirror world that's also
Okay.
rooted in everything. And it doesn't work the other way around, from what I know, where Tel'aran'rhiod influences our physical world, but it is so cool.
Unless you get got there, if you die in Tel'aran'rhiod, then you're not waking up in your physical body in the real world.
Like the Matrix.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly like the Matrix. It so often I think of it exactly as the Matrix. Like it's the same thing. It's the same
When
thing.
you were first describing it, Christian, it kind of had like a Harry Potter room of requirement, the dark side of the room of requirement vibe to it, but then it definitely went much more towards the Matrix. That sounds super cool.
I've always visualized it as the upside down from Stranger Things, because it's basically that visually. It's very foggy, darker. It's not as hell like as the upside down, but it's very misty, foggy, and it's just a reflection of our real world. It's really cool.
Okay. So kind of like the mirror worlds from Doctor Strange, like the mirror realms.
Yeah.
That you would see in Doctor Strange in the multiverse of Marvel.
That's more like portal stones, but still same kind of thing. So there's like multi dimensions within another place within the Wheel of Time, but it gets a little it's a bit much. I don't know. I know some people really love it, but I don't know.
I was excited to see that there were going to be other dimensions in the Wheel of Time. Like when we got to the ways in season 1, I was like, okay, this is a multiversal system they've got going on here. So that's super cool because that opens the door to so much creativity. I love it.
I'm really glad, Christian, that you brought up Tel'aran'rhiod because I'm glad you like it, because I'm one of those people where I'm just like, ugh, when is something cool gonna happen here? There's so much potential in this place.
Oh yeah.
So much potential to do wild stuff. And it's just like, nope, we're gonna look through letters. Like stuff like that. Where I'm like, man, can you imagine if this is so hard to talk about because of spoilers, but there are like some major things that happen in Tel'aran'rhiod, but it's never really, in my opinion, done in a way where there's more than like one big like gotcha moment and you're like, oh, that was cool. And then you don't really need this place ever again. And that's about it. Where I'm like, if you're going to create this place where almost anything, like your wildest imagination, like you can think up here, you can do it, like you better run with it because there are so many opportunities to do wild stuff.
I think another thing that doesn't help with Tel'aran'rhiod and why it's not at the top of my list to talk about is that it's tied to one of my biggest frustrations with the final few books. And I probably don't have to say more because I've ripped on this thing many times. It's
give me a teaser. Well, people watching might not know.
There is something that happened before the mid-series that I feel ties off everything we need for a particular story. It then goes on and on until literally the final book. And
I know what you're talking about.
I hate it. I absolutely.
I was like, Christian, that's the most vague description I've ever heard. I was like,
there's
what?
If you know, you know.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. I don't know.
There's a
I did
rivalry.
listen to
There's a rivalry between two characters that just it goes on and on and on. And the conclusion like it's kind of like a whimper, you know, like it ends and you're like, well, I'm not getting that time back with my life.
And on
Ooh.
top of that, just to give a little bit more of a teaser, is that I was mildly okay with it because of the
I
very end of it. And then we had the 10th anniversary recently, and we got one more kind of secret, but it's not really a secret. And it just ruined that final bit of goodwill I had with
there
that
was
plot line.
there was a
So,
retcon, Laura. So 10 years after the anniversary of the final book of the Wheel of Time, Brandon Sanderson was like, and I'm going to tell you all a very big surprise about the Wheel of Time. And they're like, this character lived. And everyone was like, ah, like mind blown. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But then, like, this whole entire crazy long arc that happens in Tel'aran'rhiod, where we're supposed to think that one character is actually kind of like Neo, you know what I mean, in the Matrix, like just doing their thing and best and so great. And I was like, fake out. That person sucks. He just thought he was good.
I actually am familiar with that. Like, I don't know all of the characters and the details, but I had come across things while looking into Wheel of Time things that was talking about that, like, much later on in the future announcement that he did. And the one that I saw was like, why did they even do this?
Well, it's because people love this is my opinion. This is not a fact, but people love the character that lives on.
Okay.
So it's almost like a gift to them, I feel like, more than I mean, it doesn't change. I don't know. There's no real point, I guess, to
we're
it.
never getting sequel novels unless
Yeah.
I mean, there were no outlines left. So that's why for me, I'm like, I don't care because we don't know what happens
Well,
after
that's
the final.
that's
So
kind of my thing. It's like, why do this if there is no more material coming? That just seemed like, okay, thank you.
It would be like after it would be like 10 years after the finale of Game of Thrones where Jon kills Dany. Dave and
that
Dan
is so
Dave and
close.
Dan
Yeah.
were like, fake out. Danny's alive. It's just like, what? Come on.
Drogon resuscitated her on a
Mouth to
mountain.
mouth.
Yeah. He gave her mouth
He
to
used
mouth
the tip of his claw
resuscitation.
on her chest.
Yeah.
Try and get her heart to go.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's fine. For the people who love that character, I'm happy for you. Really. I am.
Okay.
Like, good for you. You have something exciting to talk about, I guess. So, yeah. But for me, I'm like, whatever.
Okay, I got one last question pertaining to this release a
Hmm.
decade after the books. Did it pose as like a jumping off point for a lot of fan fiction, or did anything like really come of it? Like anything creative come? Nope. Okay.
It's
All
fun to
right.
think about for me, kind of like, oh, I wonder what this character would do. But there's really only like two pathways that you can go down. And you could probably make your own fan fiction, like this character will go here, then here, then here. But there's no use of doing that because we're not going to get further stuff. So it's like,
Right.
it's fine. I mean,
Is the fan fiction from Wheel of Time have the depth that it does from A Song of Ice and Fire? Because there's endless amounts of fan fiction for A Song of Ice and Fire.
I wouldn't really know. I've never really looked into it, but what I do think is really funny though is the showrunner was getting harassed online and he's a gay man and I can't remember but people were being like really awful towards him, like sending him death threats and stuff like that, and he was like, you want to be jerks, fine, I'm gonna turn everyone gay. Randall Thor and Parody Bara, gay, they're gay now.
Randall Thor is bisexual and everyone knows it.
I think so. I actually wouldn't mind that change because he has a vibe.
That would be refreshing. Yeah, bisexual vibe or a pan vibe. I mean, it could be
Right.
either or, but he does not have a hetero male vibe. Not whatsoever. At least not on the show. Maybe in the books it translates a little bit differently, but how it translated in the show was that him and Matt have like a relationship, which is fine, even though Matt sucks and Rand has terrible taste. But like it didn't translate as like we're just really deep friends. It did not come across that way.
Well,
I'll
there's
say, as a bisexual man, his internal monologue is very similar to mine. When I was reading it, I related to
See?
him so hard.
See?
he's
I mean, I don't doubt it for a second that he is.
some of the relationships that he has though that are just ugh, like I don't know. There's a lot of good ones between Rand, but for the most part, like him and Egwene, that is the relationship that I hate the worst. Like they're awful, awful to each other.
I could see that.
She's the reason.
Like, yeah, I could see that too. There's really like a handful of characters that I wish the show would focus on for me personally because I
Tell
find them
me.
interesting, but I
Tell
realize
me.
that that's not how it works. Well, Nynaeve, first of all, her stories, and I really enjoy her story. And then Moraine, I would like to focus on her, but I know that that's probably not going to happen. And I'm
You
okay with
You
that.
know what? You could read New Spring because you've already watched season 1 of the show. There's a prequel all about Moraine as a young woman in the White Tower and Swan Sanche
Ooh,
and their relationship together because,
that
like,
was another one.
yeah, I love them. I love
It is.
them.
I happen
Yeah.
to have
Okay.
it in reaching order, or reaching in reach. Yeah.
All
Okay, so
right.
you want to know more about Nynaeve?
I want to know about Nynaeve, Moraine, Swan Sanche, a couple other characters I cannot remember the name of. Who's the Gleeman?
Tom.
Tom.
I like show Gleeman. Amber and I have spoken about this. I don't know as though I would be like, the book Gleeman is super cool. But the dark way that they portray him in the show, I really enjoyed.
In the books,
I didn't really like his little cape in the books.
yeah, in the books, he's way more undercover assassin. Like nobody knows that he's, throwing daggers, killing people, like
Okay.
in the show. But
So the getup is just a mirage.
yes, exactly.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, that I could handle.
He is very performative. Depending on what location he's in and who he's around, he can change. But he is like a master spy. So
Okay. That's super cool then.
love Tom. I love Tom. He's not
Can make a little set of side series about Tom.
yeah. Oh, if you only knew who Tom ends up with.
Oh, he has a romance arc? Wild.
It's an arc.
I
Okay.
was gonna say
It's
this
just an
hints,
arc.
but
Yeah, there's
It's
like
an arc. It goes places.
there's not really any romance, but it's yeah,
Excellent.
it's like, oh, and we're a thing now. Oh, okay. Surprise.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But when you were talking about Rand, like for real, this is one of the biggest, I think, problems with the Wheel of Time is that there's spaces for lesbian women, but not gay men in the books. Like gay men, they're just like supposedly they exist, they're just not ever inserted into the story. So it's kind of sad. So when they introduced Alana and her two warders and they are a throuple, like now we're actually like bringing that into the show, which I'm glad they did.
it's my
Oh,
favorite
that
change
wasn't in the
personally.
book?
Mm-mm.
That aspect's not in the book. Good for the showrunner for doing that. I really enjoy when shows find a way to make a story more inclusive and make it work within their material that they're using.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. A lot of people were upset because one of the so like we were talking about Dorne. Like we have these spear fighters from Dorne, right? Like Oberyn. And in the Wheel of Time, we have something kind of similar where there are people who are shaped by this very harsh climate, and they have like warrior societies of women too.
Is that the Aiel?
Yeah. And
I would watch a whole show about the Aiel. Like the clips that we saw from season 1 were tantalizing.
I'm I'm so excited. I hope we actually go to the Io Waste, like where these people are from. I hope we actually get to see it and it's not just like we encountered some on the road somewhere, because their whole like structure of everything is really interesting, and it's more like egalitarian, like in Dorne, like the women there, like they own their hold, like they own their homes. So like it doesn't matter if the king of some nation came up to your door, like you have the permission to deny and bar access to anyone. And that is like afforded the right to any one of these people who are a roof mistress. So like it's really cool. Like, and two, like the women choose the men. Like the man doesn't propose. The woman is like, him, like we want him. So, and
Oh,
I say we
nice.
because
Nice.
they have multiple people marriages as well. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
That's fun.
Polyamory. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really cool.
Yeah.
Because in the books, the
I
way
don't
that the bond or the waters are, I just don't like that at all. Anytime someone's like, "I'm a warder to this Aes Sedai," I'm like, "Oh, she basically owns you and just
You're her
tells you what to
slave.
do." Yeah,
Cool.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
why I'm not like, "Oh, how wonderful." I feel like their
Honor.
bond is oppressive and gross in a lot
It
of
is.
ways.
You
Like,
can push on them like mentally, like to do what you want
right.
them to do. And I'm like, that's kind of messed up.
Plus, like, if your Aes Sedai dies, look at how that goes. Like, I saw just a bit of that in the show. And if that's kind of how it goes for everybody, all the warders, if their Aes Sedai dies, that's a really questionable point of connection. Like,
And it
why does it have to have such a tragic element to it?
and it works the other way around. If your warder dies and the Aes Sedai is like still alive, you pretty much want to kill yourself as well. So, and there are some Aes Sedai that have like multiple warders, like four. So like what happens if
Running
they
real steep probabilities there.
right, and I don't know. That's the green Aja for you, though. That's the thirsty Aja.
Okay, the thirsty Aja. I
Hmm.
like that. All right.
Yeah.
I have my primary location to speak
Okay.
about. So, my actual favorite location in a fantasy series, it's not from a book, it's from a comic book. It's Tao Lo from Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings. I love this place. The way that they recreated the comic book like location in the movie was incredible. It's a village in a multiversal dimension with magical creatures, a lush landscape, breathtaking architectural details. Yes, please. I love it. Also, every aspect in this movie that's related to Taolo is amazing visually.
Is
And
this
I
in the
find what
Marvel universe?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and what I find most impressive in this fantasy location is the level of fine detail that goes into everything. So in order to access Taolo, you have to make your way through a magical forest of magical bamboo that where the pathways are constantly shifting and moving. It's a ever-changing maze and it's a murderous forest. It consumes people who get caught in it.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, it's a really imaginative take on, like, a stronghold's outer defenses, and that I
Okay.
really love. So then once you get inside of Taolo, if you can make it to the portal through the magical maze, you get inside and you're greeted with this, like, rocky yet lush verdant paradise that's filled with life. You enter into a valley that's surrounded by these large buttes and mountain ranges all over the place. And then you get glimpses of the mythological creatures that reside here. So for anybody who's seen it, like Morris is a big character and he's a little mythological Dijiang. I think that's how it's pronounced. So they're like faceless, which somehow they make faceless very adorable, and they're chirpy. I just love those. Then we have
Oh, I
the
love
yeah,
them. I love them.
I love them. And
I
they're
don't know
little
what they are, but I love
I'll have
them.
I'll send you some pictures. They have little iridescent wings with
Oh,
they look like little stuffed animals with no faces and wings. They're the cutest thing ever. Then we have the Fang Han, which are the phoenix-like birds that you see all over the sky. And then we have the Huli Jing, which is the nine-tailed fox, and the Qilin, which is the dragon horse hybrid that you see in
ooh.
Chinese mythology. These are actually one of my favorite creatures from the movie. The way that they're portrayed is just beautiful.
What movie is it from?
Shang-Chi and The Legend
Okay.
of the Ten Rings.
Okay.
It's in the I think it's phase 4 Marvel. So it's after Endgame.
Okay.
Then yeah, and we also have dragons, which of course I love, and then a pair of shishi, which are guardian lions that serve to protect the village and its
Oh.
inhabitants. But this village itself, it's located in a small clearing on the shore of a giant body of water, and it's outlined by towering mountains, and across the water is what's called the Dark Gate. The village, though, in the movie is very small, and there's an ancestral temple at its center. Then it's surrounded by a handful of functional buildings like an armory, a Potter house, and a schoolroom. But when you go into the temple with the characters, you see this real quick. Do either one of you know what those descriptive, like wood carved walls that you see in China are actually called?
Oh, no, but I know exactly what you're talking about because
Okay.
just being in like gardens and stuff.
So on like the outside of the central temple, there's these huge ornate works of art just depicting how when the dweller came to this dimension, the people of this village and the great protector were able to push the dweller and its soul-consuming minions into the dark gate. And now they serve as the permanent protectors between the dark gate and our realm of dimension. I love it. Everything about this area it's just incredible and it's magical, and I never get tired of watching those first entry scenes at a Tel'aran'rhiod. Like I just never get tired of it.
Now I'm gonna actually watch this because of
You should.
you.
Same.
It's not it's not even my favorite Marvel movie. It's a very good I really enjoyed the movie, but it's not my favorite, but visually it's probably my favorite landscape within Marvel. And I know that that's not something that we cover a lot on here, but I really like Marvel personally.
Well, it's
I think
really
they do a
nice.
good job.
It's really
It
nice because
is.
you don't typically get to see like a more like fantastical world in the Marvel universe. Like you got some space scenes, you've got different Earth locations, but if you're going to take me to another world, a different dimension, like make it look different, make it look cool, and of course throw in some nice mythological creatures because that's always a
To really round it out.
yeah, that's
To really
icing
round it out.
icing on the
It's
cake.
icing. I did some research for the show about the location of Tao Lo in the movie, and I found out that they built everything specifically for that. And if it wasn't built by
Ooh,
them, it was all production special effect.
ooh,
Like
Mm.
they used a lot of very traditional Chinese architectural motifs, specifically looking towards the Tang and Song dynasties for style guidance, mostly because they like the symbolism, the styles, and the colors. But the inspiration, Sue Chang, she's the production designer for Shang-Chi. She explained that they don't actually stick to one specific era of Chinese history or mythology, and there is no specific dynasty that they're trying to stick with because this isn't actually in our world. It's in another dimension. So they were able to pull from multiple ones. Like it's beautiful. Even the temple, like the ancestral temple, just when you get the first glimpse of it, it's everything about that Tao Lo is breathtaking. I want to live there.
I love a
Please
good
send me to
I love a good story
please.
that can merge like architectural styles and stuff like that though, where it's like
Yeah,
you can clearly see the inspiration, but until you're like right there looking at all the detail, you can't possibly know like what all they're pulling from. I think that's always really
absolutely.
fun with like set design because you're gonna catch something different every time you watch.
They built the set outside of Sydney, Australia.
Ooh, can you go visit and look at it? Like, is there
I don't I don't know even if you could because it was made all with foam and steel.
Oh,
They
okay.
didn't use
Okay.
stone or wood in anything, they just used foam and steel, probably for ease of build. I don't know if they left anything up, I don't know if it's like how the Lord of the Rings
Yeah, it's
sets are
not like
still
Hobbitown.
available. Yeah, I would absolutely go to New Zealand and pay to stay in the Shire. Get out of here, who wouldn't?
Uh,
But yeah, that's my favorite one. And mostly because it brings something so new that a lot of times I don't get exposed to in fantasy, which is Chinese mythology. I find it super interesting, but it's not something that's visually represented a lot.
yeah. I don't know how to pronounce it. The Chulu Creek and the Poppy Wars is terrifying,
Ooh.
terrifying. And that's based on some, I mean, loosely based, I guess, on some Chinese mythology. But yeah, this is this place where, like, if you're a shaman and you start losing your mind, that's where you go, and you are like pretty much imprisoned in stone, like a statue, forever, and you're still conscious. So you're just left there to reel on in your own head. Yeah, it's
What kind
awful.
of what kind of a
Awful.
sadist came up with that rule?
I want to
Why do you have
emphasize
to be conscious? That's awful.
I want to emphasize how scary it is because you stand there and the stone slowly creeps from your feet and goes up your body and perfectly encapsulates your body's shape. And you can't move, you can't flex your fingers, nothing. You just sit there and you are conscious the entire time. I want to emphasize how
And it can be
scary.
for
The,
hundreds, thousands, eternity.
yeah, because it's a magic
That
deafening
in
mountain,
itself
basically.
That in itself would drive you to insanity and beyond. Honestly, what kind of sadist comes up with this?
RF Kwong, Rebecca Kwong.
Well, I don't actually mean the writer, I meant the person in it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they
I meant the fictional person in
well,
charge.
they had to, so, like, if you're a shaman, clearly, like, you are one of the most powerful people in this world, and clearly, the common folk don't like a lot of those walking around because they like their power where they want it and not, at the hands of some teenager. But
That's fair.
they eventually start to kind of lose their grip on reality, the shamans do, and they can't really kill some of them, so, like, you just have to imprison them away for eternity, and
Right, but why do they need to stay conscious while they're imprisoned? That's
oh,
my real
yeah.
question. Like, what's with that element of like, extreme sadistic punishment going
I
on?
don't think they say whether if it was ever created or if it was just something that, like, always was from the beginning of time, it was like Steve up in HR was like, "I'm gonna come up with the worst, the most horrible thing."
I've got this idea on how to punish people. Let me
Yeah.
run it by everyone.
Yeah.
It'll really blow their minds.
Okay, Christian, you had another one, right?
Yes. So my heavily researched setting is the Shattered Plains from the Stormlight Archive, which I have book one here. So the Shattered Plains consist of huge numbers of plateaus that are various sizes, and they're all surrounded by like a massive labyrinth of chasms that can only be crossed by bridge crews shoving giant mobile bridges over the chasm and keeping it there until the army that is crossing the bridge comes back. And they come back once they get the gem heart, which is the heart of these giant creatures called chasm fiends. They lurk in the chasms, and they
Okay.
are giant crab monsters,
I
basically.
I don't wanna cut you off, but I
Hmm.
think the chasm fiends and all of these creatures that live there are the coolest aspect to it. Like,
They
they're
sound cool.
it's all like crustaceans. I don't know. They're cool though. They're cool, and they're like some of them are like very, very large. Maybe not Godzilla large, but dinosaur large.
Are the bridges constructed with magic? Because the idea of just throwing a bridge up on a chasm and
Slaves.
an
It's
army crossing
it's slave
Slaves.
driven.
it just seems. Oh, okay. So high skill craftsmen slaves, because bridges take a lot of intelligence to make.
These are like low tech bridges, though. Like, think like a giant plank, and they send the people who are replaceable. These people get taken out. So the reason that these bridges are made is usually just for like warring, right? Like
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
just so that one warring faction can get over the next spot to get to the next location, and then archers are taking everybody out left and right, and these slaves, they usually all get got.
Okay. Mass genocide for the low level troops.
Yes,
Got it.
exactly that.
And the reason they're low level, especially, is because the caste system is based on eye color. So the lighter your eyes, the higher class you are. So everyone are
How
dark
surprising.
eyes. Yeah,
Yeah.
so they shove all the dark eyes to the front of the line. They're like, okay, now go run. As long as you get the bridge there, so we can cross, we can go find a new batch of slaves to bring that bridge back. So.
Mhm.
Christian, it looks like you and I would be building bridges.
Me and my dark hazel eyes, the darkest.
Oh, wait. I would be even lower than you then.
Do you know what even
They'd be using
annoys
me to
me?
test the
Like,
bridges.
you know what even annoys me worse than the light eyes, dark eyes thing? And I can say that because I'm a light eyes, I guess. But the
She would
fact,
be sending us.
yeah, the fact that only men and women can eat certainly spiced foods, like women don't eat spicy food.
Is
They
it
only eat
because we're
sweet
so
food.
delicate?
Yeah, I guess. I don't really
Okay.
know, but it is maddening. Like,
That's a weird feature for a story.
and oh, what is it? So what is it? Okay, Kristen, you would know way better than me because it's been a long time, but
Mhm.
there are many things that only men and women can do, right?
Yeah, like men are not allowed to read or write in this world. Only women are. There's a certain religious faction in this world called I don't know what they're called, but the priests are called ardents, and all of them have to shave their heads, and they have to, from memory, give everybody sort of the religious teachings. And it's interesting that men are not allowed to read because that's a huge advantage. And one of our male characters in the story does eventually learn how to read and write. And it's one of the biggest advantages that this character has. And he's the first one who even attempts. Everyone else just takes it, as face value. And it's like, okay, yeah, we can't read, whatever. And they usually go to war. And they make all the wives come to war with them to take care of the base camp. And at least on the
Logistics.
yeah, the
Somebody's got to do
What a
it.
sham.
yeah.
What a sham. So not only would I be building bridges and testing them, but then I'd probably have to go hang out with my husband at a war. Me having dark eyes would be terrible.
I don't know.
I know that wasn't the focus, but I put that, I was like, oh, this gets worse and worse for
There-
people with dark eyes.
There's a lot of like aspects to the Stormlight Archive that I really like, and there are a lot of them that I don't like. But the Spren, the creatures, like your, I don't know, fairy therapist, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that. You and I did the Stormlight Archives personality test. That was so fun.
What did you have,
I-
Christian? Have you ever taken it?
I think Renarin is the closest for me. I
What
think that's who
was?
I got.
Oh, no, no,
If
no.
you
I'm
remember.
talking about the Knights Radiant quiz.
Oh, that's been
It
so
was
long since
fun.
I've done it.
We
I
should.
think I did it the day they launched it.
It was fun. I have no experience, but what was mine? Lightbringer?
Light Weaver, I think.
Light Weaver.
Was that
I got
right,
Light
Kristen?
Weaver.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lightweaver. Yeah.
Yeah, I got Lightweaver. It made sense when I read the synopsis of the personality. I was like, okay, yeah, I see that. Amber got a fun one because I read hers
It's
too.
whatever Venli is. What is Venli? A
Will Shaper?
yeah. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah,
remember.
I
I
think
need to
you're right.
reread it.
I think you're
Will
right.
Shaper's the first one that pops up. So
I still don't understand what it is, what it means, what it
the
does.
Dustbringers are the coolest one. They're basically fire mages, and that's not even going to be explored until book 8 or 9, I think. Brandon's already said which
Lame.
order each book is, and it's like all the cool ones at the end. Come on.
I don't like waiting too long for background information or contextual information. I'm like, can you just give me like kind of a brief overview and then we can crack into the story?
Cliff notes, something.
Yeah, hit me with some Cliff's notes and then let me read the story. Like some universe or that specific story's universe, some Cliff notes of the universe, and then let me get into the story. Because otherwise, whenever I start reading books, a lot of times I have constant questions running through my head, which makes it so that I have to reread paragraphs because I'm reading, but also thinking of questions I have.
At the same
What's really
time.
what is
Yeah.
really frustrating is that the Cosmere does have a book like that called the Ars Arcanum, which is an entire behind the scenes. Here's where each planet is.
Oh,
Here's all the factions, this, that, and the other. Except it's all spoiler marked. So,
Okay.
Brand at the time that it was written, it was before book 4 of Stormlight, and everything that this character already knows, they keep it hidden from the writer or from the reader, and so frustrating. And so you only get like a page or two for each planet.
Brandon Sanderson needs to, put his minions of dark-eyed workers and fix that. Make it a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, because right now you only have the wiki, and you have to have read every single book by Brandon to even look onto there, because you're going to get spoiled. So
That's the thing that I think
Right.
bugs me the most about his entire, world. It's like you can't look things up. You have to do everything in a certain way. Like you can only read this book until you've after read this book. And like there's this whole like way that you have to do things. And I'm sorry, but I'm a little bit of a rebel and like I don't care. Like I have known all the information that I have now, I would have went straight into Stormlight and just read it because people are like, "Oh, you got to read this, you got to read that." And I was like, felt like I was wasting a little bit of time. Like I wanted to get into the good stuff. and then
Me too.
and then I'm like, I don't want to go on this rabbit hunt, like rabbit hole to chase whatever words hard. I'm flustered because it's so upsetting. It's so hard to like get fully acquainted into his world without reading all of his books. And it's just and some of them aren't very good. Like I couldn't get past what's the first one?
Are you talking about reading different series
they're
in
all
order to
connected.
read one?
But
Okay,
that's like
I can appreciate that.
yeah, like
I can appreciate it, but
hands
also
down.
like it's a lot. It's a lot.
Hands down, like Brandon Sanderson fans are probably the most like diehard fans
I
in
believe
any
that.
fandom because like you have to jump through hoops and it is hard. Like a lot of it is really long too. So like these are the people that will go through all of these books, get like all of the answers to find out everything. And I mean it's still probably shorter than The Wheel of Time, but like there's a lot. There's a
Here's
lot.
just one of the books. This is Rhythm of War. This is his biggest book he has. It's 1,300 pages. It's ultra thin paper.
And that's the best
And
one out of
yeah,
all of them, in my opinion.
I like number 3 a little bit more. Actually, I did not like Rhythm of War, but I can't judge it too much until I've read book 3 or book 5. But my main issue, and this is something I haven't really talked about because I used to be a huge Brandon Sanderson fan, and I think it was since I graduated grad school when I finally realized I don't have time anymore to keep up with everything. Because I used to be an expert. I'm pretty much an expert up to Bands of Mourning, which was 2016 or so. Everything after that, I'm very hazy on because I was rereading each book as they came out and rereading all the past ones. So I've read most of these books 3 or 4 times now, but with the latest book in Mistborn Era 2, which is called Lost Metal, there were characters from his very first novels that he'd written in there just running around, and you were supposed to know that. And I finished it, and one of my friends was like, "Hey, like this character from Elantris is in here. Did you notice?" I'm like, "I haven't read Elantris in a very long time." After Lost Metal, and I realized the Cosmere is not even going to be done for another 30 years, I was like, I burnt out instantly, and
30
I've
years.
left basically all the Discord channels, everything, because I just
Oh,
don't want to see his name. And then he announced he finished 5 extra books during 2020 during the COVID pandemic
Yeah,
that are all
his
connected, and I
stress
was just
relief,
like, no more.
his therapy is, like,
that's
writing 5
impressive.
novels.
I mean, it's impressive in a way.
Yeah,
I find with what you guys are describing, I find Brandon Sanderson very impressive, but it also pushes me to lean away from his work because I don't know if I want to read that many books to get to a storyline. And it's not that I'm saying that they're bad books, but like, could you imagine Stormlight Archives going to an adaptation? How would they even do that? They'd need seasons to build into it from what it sounds like.
It would be like
That's
anime
wild.
seasons, like, but, like,
Okay.
many, many, many. Because you couldn't do live action, I don't think, without I mean, today, now, probably not, but who knows what's possible further down the road, but you would be looking at, like, all CGI for certain things and locations. It is very creative. It is very creative, and the magic system itself is really interesting and very different than anything else I've ever experienced in fantasy, and I can understand why people like it, but it is very complex. And if you don't want to do your homework and you just want to be entertained, it might not be the right series for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I, I think it's for people that really, really love looking through things with like a magnifying glass and putting everything together, which maybe had I found that series 10 years ago, I would have been into, but
Mm,
there's just I wouldn't be able to handle it.
if you started 10
it
years
seems
ago,
like
you'll
a
probably
lot.
be in my case where
Yeah.
you just get burnt out because I one thing I was shocked by because one of my friends had just read the Cosmere last year in a 3 or 4 month span, and we did an episode on my channel for every single book. And I liken the entire Cosmere to like trying to put all of the Marvel comics into chronological order and then reading each issue that way. That's how it is for him because I have like 3 or 4 different reading orders depending on what type of reader people are. For me, I love picking up the Cosmere stuff, but and so I have a reading order on that where I'm like, okay, you first have to start chronologically with Elantris and then Mistborn and then all this stuff. But you have people who see my reading order and they start, arguing with me. These, really
Oh,
big fans
yeah.
of Brandon.
Brandon Sanderson fans in reading order, like, whew. Like, I got
I have
yelled
my
at
reason.
once. I've been yelled
Yeah.
at,
Yeah.
like,
And I've been,
Over a
accosted.
reading
yeah.
order?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's wild behavior.
And that's the main reason I stopped. I just stepped out of the Brandon Sanderson fandom because I was like, I'm done with this shit. Like, I love these books and I don't have the time anymore. And then I'm like, ooh, it'd be fun if, there was a novel about this, like, or I'll just be theorizing about something. And so I'd be like, idiot, steel doesn't work that way. You have to use copper and duralumin because magic. One series has where you eat metal through like a vial of like alcohol or just water.
Shavings.
Yeah. And you get different powers depending on the different elements. And people are like able to figure out how, like, physics using these different magical rules. And so when you give a theory and you're like, oh, it'd be cool if it did this, someone somewhere will find your message and tell you why you're wrong because of the physics that Brandon has set up. And it's really exhausting.
I feel like there are
That
angry
sounds
nerds.
exhausting.
Yeah, I feel like there are angry nerds in every fandom, but the reading order thing, that's rough. Like, I'm just here to have a good time, read a book. This is my like relaxing time. And if someone's gonna come at me and be like, you did it all wrong, and I'm like,
You're not having fun the right way.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Maybe we
Not
should
having
end it
fun
on
the way I
that.
said you should.
You're not having fun the right way. in my
Brandon
opinion.
Sanderson has never issued his own suggestion of reading order. He just lets people knife fight this out online.
Well, what's complicated is that he has recommended. He never says one way or the other. And there's one specific novella that I'm thinking about called Mistborn Secret History that was secretly released after book 3 of Mistborn Era 2, which is called Bands of Morning. Because there's in the epilogue, there's a big reveal that everyone but me caught on, which was that one of the characters hundreds of years ago is still alive. And this novella explains that.
Okay.
And in the foreword of Bands of Morning, Brandon was like, hey, by the way, I released a secret novella on my website. This explains all of it. That is the crux of all the issues people have, because I think it needs to be that needs to be read as soon as possible, because everybody loves that twist and everyone will just stop talking about it in the reviews. So you either get spoiled on it like I was, or you read it now, like very early in the reading order. And that's how I have it. So
Okay.
that novella is a big issue for us reading order people. So.
That's
Aficionados.
oh man. And everybody has their right way to read it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I have like three different reading orders, because I'm like, do you like the multi-series connections? No? Okay.
They
Stormlight.
need to make one of those charts where it's like arrows going here. Do you like this or do you like this? And you go this way. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
Yes.
Find your own reading order based on personality.
That's perfect. That's what they should have done.
Brandon,
when you take for
put your minions
what
to
was
use.
it? The Knights of what was it
Knights
called?
Radiance quiz.
The Knights Radiance.
The Knights Radiance quiz should also tell you your reading order based on your personality.
Yeah.
Update it,
awesome.
Brandon. Get the algorithm in there.
So I'm going to wrap it up before we hit 2 hours. And everyone, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Go check out Laura's channel and Christian's channel. They will be linked down below. And we will be back probably in a few weeks' time. So we will see you then.